Hello there, my name's Card. I'm a long-time progressive organiser with a particular interest in how ideological and philosophical beliefs play out in people's actual lives. Here on my YouTube page, I've been making these little videos exploring that dynamic as it applies to a range of topics for a little while now. And not for the first time here, today I'd like to talk about a subject related to gender identity and how we acknowledge it interpersonally. But before we get too deeply into things, I'll just briefly frame the particular subject of this video and a few crucial terms. As a general rule, I usually try to write these videos assuming that the hypothetical viewer watching it won't necessarily know anything about the subject prior. I only do this so as to remember to explain every concept I bring up, not just because I think people in general are ignorant or anything. But today, I would like to begin from a point of some assumed knowledge of the subject matter. I'm not asking you to have read every page of their wiki or anything, but for this one, you should at least be familiar with the modern Christian law, as well as the concept of being transgender, of course. So if you don't already know who I'm referring to in the title of this video, and why their pronouns are a matter of online discussion already, the best course of action for you would honestly be to skip this particular video. Plus, I'm hoping to keep this one short so you won't even be missing much. If you want to bow out for that reason, then now's the time. You have my blessing. If you are still with me, that title is what I want to answer today. What gendered pronouns should you use for Chris-Chan? I'm just going to get right to the point. I don't think you need to jump through hoops to defend Chris-Chan's asserted female identity and preference for feminine, i.e. she/her pronouns. That's not to say I think Chris-Chan doesn't have a right to self-identify in whichever way they so choose, or even that they're not a valid trans woman necessarily. But in any case, the best possible progressive reading of the situation is that Chris-Chan has been manipulated and gaslit like no one else, into thinking they're a woman by the sort of malicious trolls who are themselves the specific kind of transphobic who apparently think convincing someone that they are trans is the height of comedy. On the other hand, a less generous line to take would be to assert that Chris has been half-heartedly using feminine pronouns in a self-aware attempt at deception in the highly misguided belief that this will expand their already functionally non-existent dating pool. And as much as I've argued abstract points here on this very YouTube page before by pushing the bounds of credibility in other identity-related videos, I can still call out such claims made with ulterior motives when I see them. Like Jessica Yaniv a few years back, or much more recently, the Canadian high school educator who took to showing up to work wearing absurdly large prosthetic breasts. Now, in either of those two cases, and the validity of each respective person's trans identity aside, they're both pretty plainly just trying to bait a reaction out of polite society, cop some backlash, and then file discrimination suits judiciously in return. You can make your own moral judgment as to whether you support that, but in regards to Chris-Chan, I think the truth actually lies somewhere else entirely. I've argued for the general validity of self-ID on this channel before as well, including making the anti-transmedicalist line almost to the point of untelegraphed parody, and that is largely my genuine belief on the matter. I want to believe in the validity of people's declared pronouns, and I can and will in mutual good faith. But one way or another, Chris-Chan is highly exceptional, almost uniquely so, in that they are a grown adult whose understanding of identity is so far removed from even the most cynical, genuinely held view of the world, that, in my view, their identity cannot even reasonably be humoured, nor is it healthy to performatively try. In short, quite frankly, despite having shown increased interest in gender expression in more recent years, Chris-Chan can very reasonably be said not to have enough of an understanding of identity in an abstract sense that their professed sense of self can be considered reliable, let alone valid. I will remind people that shortly after Chris took up a transgender identity at the urging of manipulative trolls, they also began to sincerely claim to be married to several fictional characters, capable of seeing these characters and travelling to their fictional reality, and most recently, to be themselves the reincarnated amalgamation of Jesus Christ and several fictitious deities. Through a combination of pure genetic happenstance far beyond anyone's control, as well as no small amount of highly abnormal formative life experiences, some people are just uniquely strange, and long beyond open-quote rehabilitation into societal normality. It's a highly unfortunate fact, but it's a fact nonetheless. In a remotely benevolent world, there'd be a ward of the state, and just as I think the vast majority of people claiming some stripe of gender identity under the broad non-cis umbrella aren't doing anyone any harm and should be left in peace and at liberty to define their sense of self and what it means to them, almost inversely, I think the best possible course of action would be to ignore Chris regardless of whatever they declare their identity to be. It would be better for Chris, that's for sure, and it would probably be better for everyone who's studying them. Arguably, this video itself is somewhat hypocritical in that regard, because I'm still talking about them here, but I am willing to be a bit hypercritical to get my point out there. It's basically because I affirm trans rights that I think a completely sui generis outlier like Chris Chan shouldn't be encouraged to keep going down a path put in front of them by bad faith actors in the first place. You may have noticed, for the sake of this video, I've stuck with gender-neutral terms of reference, like they-them pronouns, for Chris. I'm doing so largely as a practical middle ground, the practical approach typically being the best in any case, I find. And quite frankly, I'd hope not to need to refer to them ever again in any regard on this channel or otherwise. That seems like it would be for the best. Now, theoretically, perhaps were Chris Chan and I ever to be in the same room, I'd refer to them with their preferred pronouns as a point of civility, if nothing else. But realistically, that's not going to happen. Not to me, and most likely not to anyone who ever listens to this either. The discussion about Chris Chan's pronouns that everyone's been having online for a while now is purely a philosophical abstraction, because at this point, it's actually far right-wingers who would be more advantaged to say, no, Chris Chan is unambiguously a trans woman and that this is a typical case, even though anyone remotely familiar with the story here knows that that isn't true. We need to be willing to walk away from these protracted no-win debates sometimes. Not all the time, mind you, but having this specific argument isn't helping anyone. Thank you for listening. My name's Card, and if you'd like to hear more from me, feel free to subscribe to this channel and or go through the back catalogue of videos I've already got up. But bye for now, and have a lovely day.